What's going on, kids? This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Oakridge Ford. It is December 29th, 2019. Season's greetings. Happy holidays. The new year is nearly upon us. I'm Norman James along with Mike Jello. Those Maple brothers coming off a 6-game win streak, having it snapped against the Rangers at Scotiabank Arena Saturday night. But big deal. Points in 7 straight games, 13 of 14 ticks along the way. This team is now second in the Atlantic Division, rising up the standings with a bullet. Mike Jello, how are you, sir? What's your take on everything that's going on with this team? Because it's been pretty good.
Good morning, Norm. I, as you know, always look at things realistically, and it's great news that the Leafs have earned points in 7 straight games. I frankly don't think they deserved a point last night, but they got it because of their offense and Austin Matthews scoring a couple goals to get them a point. But the concerns about a number of factors. I mean, I look at they're in second place, but they've played 40 games, and teams like Tampa Bay and Florida and Montreal have played 2 or 3 less.
Yep.
So it may look a little bit comfortable, but it's not, and they have to keep winning, and it's going to be challenging with the injuries and with some of the things that they continue to do. It's going to be challenging for them to keep piling up points when they play like that.
Yeah, the Leafs haven't exactly kept the puck out of their own net, but they've been scoring like madmen. Now second overall in the NHL with 142 goals for. Should eclipse the Washington Capitals at some point and be the top scoring team in the NHL when all is said and done. The question is, how do they limit goals against? Because that's something they're going to have to do no matter how many they score for. And this team right now seems to be offensively firing on all cylinders. So where do you want to begin here, Mike? Do you want to talk about how this team seems to be next to unstoppable offensive force right now? Or do you want to maybe delve into the fact that this team still has defensive lapses? I mean, it's going to be a prevailing thing until it's no longer that. Which way do you want to go?
Well, start with the positive. I mean, offensively, everybody is hitting right now. I mean, Marner in that game against Carolina. Austin Matthews is now leading the team with 26 goals. I think I saw yesterday he's leading the NHL in even strength goals. And,
18.
He's up there. Yeah, he's up there in terms of the league leaders. He's on pace right now for 52 goals, I believe.
Yeah. And he's a plus
that's not out of the realm.
14 too, Mike. I mean, he's on the ice for a lot of goals against, but a plus 14 on a team where the next best guy plus minus wise is a plus 7, and you've got stars like Marner and Nylander at a plus 2. I mean, without Austin Matthews, where would this team be?
Well, yeah, I mean, we found out what it's like to have one number one center when Tavares was out earlier in the year. I think to have him as a counterbalance and to take some of the focus in terms of the checking from the other team away from him helps Matthews and also helps Tavares. It's that 1-2 punch is very important. Now, Tavares is, kicking in the odd goal. I don't think he's going to score 47 this year, but he's matching up against the other team's top center, and he's generating offense. The line last night, the sort of put together line of Kerfoot on the left wing with Nylander, they played pretty well. And Nylander is actually, for those people who think it's all negative about William Nylander, I think he's played pretty well the last couple
6
games.
6 points in the last 2 games, Mike.
Again, when we switch to the other side of this, and even they said it on the broadcast last night. I think it was Kevin Bieksa. He said, this guy is a scorer. This guy is a threat, but then he disappears. And that's the problem, is like when he is not there, then, it's the team is wanting, because if like it or not, he's one of their top players and they depend on him for consistent offense, and they need that.
Well, he wasn't exactly going with Matthews there for a while, and this is what we like about Sheldon Keith. There's an ingenuity to the way he operates and innovation, a want to be creative, a want to experiment. And wow, what a big deal, taking Matthews and Nylander, splitting them up, giving Marner's top guy Tavares to Nylander, and then situating Marner and Matthews together. And look what it's done. I mean, offensively, this team has become a juggernaut. And for as many people out there who felt like John Tavares was sent to purgatory playing with William Nylander, that was unfair to begin with. But anything but purgatory has been the result. I mean, it's just been paradise for Nylander and Tavares working together. These guys have seemed like they're in on almost every other goal over the past few games, and it's been great. And then, of course, Marner and Matthews off and on over the last game and a bit. But I think Mitch, from my perspective, seems a little bit worn down. He hasn't been the best defensively. I mean, we talk about Nylander's defensive lapses. Mitch plays a lot. And he's out there. He kills penalties. He's looked a little bit lost at times, but he could be getting a little worn down, obviously missing a bunch of games. So things bode well going forward, knowing that the offensive side of the game seems to be taken care of no matter how you line these guys up. It's what can you do defensively to shore things up so that there's more balance. You can depend on the team no matter if it's at one end of the ice or the other. You can depend on the goaltender. You can depend on the defense. And you know that things start to take shape for when the playoffs arrive, and you're going to need every aspect of your game to be firing on all cylinders to succeed there.
Yeah, and the swinging to the defensive issues. I mean, the problem is it doesn't seem that they don't know what to do. It's at certain points. I continue to refer to it as vapor lock. They get into these situations where they give up one goal and then they can't recover. And by the time you open your eyes, they've given up 2 or 3. And it happened again with in New Jersey, where they're up 2-1 at the end of one. They exchange goals, 5-on-3 power play goal for Gusev to tie it 2-2. Kapanen comes back, takes the lead 3-2, and then 2 goals involving Kyle Palmieri within a span of 3 minutes, both on giveaways. One was on the fact that they could not get the puck in their own zone. They kept fumbling it around. Palmieri circles the net and then scores, and then the other one, a ridiculously bad giveaway right at the blue line by Kasper Kapanen that ends up going the other way on a 2-on-1. And it's like Michael Hutchinson was not at fault for any of the 4 goals. And I know that people are tired of hearing that excuse, but when your team plays bad defensively, whether it's in front of your starter or your backup, you can't hold the backup or you can't hold the goaltender responsible. If you want the goaltender to make a 10-bell save and save the team's bacon, but more times out of not, when it's the backup, they're not going to. That's the reason why they're the backup, is because they're not as good as the starter. And thankfully, Hutchinson's gotten them a couple wins that was much needed, but this team needs to be able to nail it down defensively. They cannot do it, and they have these lapses right now. Now, whether they can change that by the end of the season, that's the $64,000 question.
Does Kyle Dubas attempt to change the complexion of the defensive core, knowing he can rely now on his offense and on a head coach who is going to make changes on the fly?
Well, I mean, I think the answer to that is yes, because now with the injury to Jake Muzzin, and it doesn't sound like it's a short-term injury. I think it's going to be probably, if it's a broken foot, it's probably going to be 4 or 5 weeks. Then, they don't have a lot of depth. I mean, it's funny. Sheldon Keith, before the game yesterday, said, "I'm really excited to have Martin Marincin back in the lineup." Sheldon Keith is the only person in that building who is excited that Martin Marincin was in the lineup, because we know what Martin Marincin is. He's a borderline NHL defenseman who they have called up and sent down, I think, 8 times in the last 3 weeks. He is not a long-term answer. Maybe Timothy Liljegren gets in because they called him up yesterday. Maybe they'll go back to, say, Kevin Gravel in the 4 weeks. But I think Dubas and Elliot Friedman reported yesterday that they're listening to offers and shopping potentially Jeremy Bracco. It's not going to be for a draft pick. I would assume they would use a guy who was a second in the AHL in scoring last year to get themselves a young defenseman, or maybe a left winger because they've had some injuries on the left side.
The Leafs, 40 games played, 47 points, just under a 100-point pace for the season. They picked up 100 ticks last season. I think if they keep playing the way they are right now, with alterations and repairs being made to the rest of the team going forward, they should eclipse the 100-point plateau for 2019-2020. This is the Leafs Convo podcast, presented by Oakridge Ford in London, Ontario. Norm James in London, Mike Augello in Cheektowaga, New York. Season's greetings, happy holidays, a belated Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. It's all happening right now, and it's all happening on the Leafs Comp. I'm going to run down a few of our OGs and converts from community in just a few minutes, the types of people like yourselves who helped to make this podcast experiment what it is. Mediocre. But hey, Mike and I are hanging on for dear life, and that's what it's all about. I want to throw out a couple of names here. Ilya Mikheyev, pretty severe injury. Hope he's okay. What are you hearing?
Well, it was artery severed and tendon severed. The reports after the injury was that he will recover and he'll be, back to normal. But the question is when. The report from his agent, Daniel Milstein, and from the Leafs said a minimum of 90 days, and then they'll reevaluate. If you project out 90 days, that's the end of March. That's a week or two before the playoffs. I seriously doubt, unless he's a quick healer, we're going to see Mikheyev back this season. Because, he'll be able to skate, obviously, since it didn't affect his legs. But, there's the healing process. There's the atrophy in terms of, his wrist and regaining strength.
Yep.
If he comes back, he's not going to be the same player that played in the first half. And that's a loss, but fortunately, it sounds like he's going to recover fully, and he's a guy who at this organization sees a future for.
Absolutely. 23 points, 8 goals in 39 games. Let him rest, let him heal, let him get through this unfortunate period in his young career, and let this guy come back and contribute to a Stanley Cup winner in 2021. Who else do I want to throw out there? Jason Spezza looks like he's got some legs. He scored that goal against Carolina, the afternoon game in which Sheldon Keith put him in the lineup knowing that his family was in the stands. That was a nice story, but I think Spezza's been a nice story contributing where he's been able to play over the last few games and really this entire season. He looks like he's got some legs under him. It looks like he's got a little extra life, and I'm excited to see this guy be a contributor going forward.
Yeah, I like the fact that, they spot him. He can't play 16, 17 minutes, but as sort of a 10 to 12 minute guy, he basically it's sort of like a reliever in baseball who used to be a starter. Like a guy who was a starter had to pace himself, throw some extra curveballs or sliders or change ups. With Spezza now, I think Sheldon Keith is telling him, go out and throw your 95-mile-an-hour fastball for as long as you can. And they're taking advantage of it because he's a really skilled player who can help on the second power play and helps out on the fourth line, gives them an offensive weapon that I don't think they would normally have. And I think that's valuable and will be valuable going down the stretch and in the playoffs.
Every time I think of former starter turned reliever who made way too much money and did way too little on the mound, Jeff Weaver. Remember him, Mike?
Oh, yeah. Former Yankee.
He's making like $10 million. $10 million coming out of the bullpen mid-relief, throwing a couple of innings. Nuts.
But a guy like Phil Hughes, who both of us know, who was a starter with the Yankees, they converted him to the bullpen in 2009, and he was a key to winning a World Series. He just came out and threw gas, and that's what I'm saying. A guy like Spezza, I don't think he has he can't play the top 6 role that he was playing with Dallas, but making $700,000 a year and playing on the fourth line, he can fulfill that role of being that sort of relief guy and that safety valve type of guy. And I think he's effective.
He's no Joba Chamberlain, but whatever. OG's Converse, don't complain about us making baseball comments. Mike and I are both baseball heads. I played in college and professional. It is what it is. Pierre Engvall, what's your take on this guy? He is a interesting player because the way he operates on the ice, he's lanky, he's got that big head, that long stick, and he looks fun just to observe, but he actually can get it done too. And I still think he's trying to find his place, but he's one of those guys in the Ilya Mikheyev, Dmitry Timashov mold that there is a lot of excitement about what he might be able to produce.
Well, it was funny yesterday watching the Leafs come out on the ice and seeing the names that were on the back of the jerseys. It's Adam Brooks and Gauthier and Engvall, Dermott, Justin Hall. I mean, it's like the Marlies of 2 years ago, and obviously now you have the former coach of the Marlies, and how important the player development of this team. Remember, Engvall was a 7th round pick. I think it was 2014, who stayed over in the SHL in the Finnish league for a couple of years, only came over late in 2018. He had come over for a cup of coffee before that, but he can play wing. He can play center. Sheldon Keith said after the game yesterday, because he moved him to center after the injury, the absence of Mikheyev and the absence of Trevor Moore. He says, I have no problem. I have all the confidence in the world to play Engvall at center. So he played third line center. He's played wing. He's a top penalty killer. And this is a guy, and he's got, I think, 4 goals. If I'm Kyle Dubas and he's coming to the end of his entry-level contract, I try to get him locked up for 3 or 4 years at around $2.5 million, because this guy is a player. He's got the size that is not common in this organization, and he's got speed and skill, and he provides a lot of things that a lot of other players don't. So I would get him locked up as long as I can for as economical a number as I can, and I think they wouldn't be sorry.
A few more minutes, a couple of OG shout-outs coming up, but I'm going through the Leaf skaters right now, just getting Mike's impressions. Morgan Rielly, the guy hasn't scored in almost 30 games. It seemed against the Rangers like anytime he touched the puck, he took a shot. He's gripping it too tight. He came real close. You got to think in his head right now, he's feeling like he's underwhelming as a player and not living up to the billing, which is arguable. However, I feel for the guy because he is a core player. He's just in a rut right now. It's ironic when you think of how the team as a whole is producing offensively like nobody's business. Yet there's Morgan Rielly, who couldn't put a golf ball in a soccer net, but he'll get it.
Yeah, it's a little strange. I mean, even though he took, I think it was 8 or 9 shots on goal, may have been even more last night, I still sensed some tentative qualities in Rielly's play where he gets the puck and he's immediately passing it because he knows that he's struggling. And on that play in overtime where he gets the feed and is stopped, and then it comes back and Anthony DeAngelo scores the winner for the Rangers. I mean, last year he scored 20 goals. That puck would have been in the net. It's a little puzzling. I know that he missed practice time earlier in the year with some undisclosed injury. I'm sure that the switch over from Babcock, who he was the favorite son of, he was thanked by Babcock in his statement. And now, he's taken off the top power play with Tyson Barrie, but he's still the most important defenseman on this team. Maybe some of that stuff is affecting him mentally, but he's an important guy. They have to get him on track. Yeah. I think he'll find it. Yeah.
Pretty amazing shooting percentage, 2.8%. By contrast, Austin Matthews, 18.1%. Morgan Rielly, he'll be fine. Justin Holl. I mean, I've read a lot of comments about just how well he's doing and how he's adjusting and going from a guy who could barely crack the lineup, the 7th defenseman, to someone who's going to be relied upon heavily, not only in the near term, but down the stretch and for seasons to come.
Yeah, it's ironic how the point of view of one person can change the future of one player. He was scratched as a healthy scratched 71 games last year. And when he played in the 11 games, there was no sign of that being wrong, because I don't think Mike Babcock really had confidence in Justin Holl, and he did not play very well in those 11 games. This year, I think he came to training camp with a better mindset. Yep. He played better. He played under Babcock, but he was on the bottom pairing. He has been a top 4 defenseman since Sheldon Keith joined the club, and I don't think that's going to change. He has confidence in him. I think that he's a UFA, and I think they're going to, after January 1st, you're going to hear some contract extensions from the Leafs, possibly. I wouldn't be surprised if Hull was one of them.
And you got Zach Hyman and Kasperi Kapanen, each with 9 goals. Double K has played 40 games. ZH has played 21. Clearly, Hyman's been a force since he's returned. Kapanen has been a little bit underwhelming, but it seems like things are starting to go his way, at least of late.
Yeah, the thing with Kapanen that I keep seeing, because he's been moved from line to line because of injuries, he's been moved from right wing to left wing. I think Keith should basically, you're my third line right winger, go out there and do what you do best. Because every time they switch him to a different line, every time they switch him to one side, where I don't think he plays the left side really well, it discombobulates him, and I think that's a problem. He needs consistency, and I think if you provide that, he will provide it back. As for who's the other guy we talked about? Hyman. Okay, as for Hyman, if if he had played like this through 40 games, if he had not been out the first couple months, he could arguably make a case for him as the MVP of this team because he provides things that nobody else provides. He goes into the corners, he goes to the dirty areas, he digs out the puck and gets it to Tavares or gets it to Matthews. If I could sign up for 3 more Zach Hymans, I would.
He does not mess around. Talking about Kasperi Kapanen and how he hasn't found a home, William Nylander's in the same situation, although he's not producing like he's nomadic and lost, and he's doing pretty well this season, could be out for a career year when all is said and done. Sheldon Keith, will he ever find himself under criticism for mixing things up too much and too often? I know it's refreshing compared to Mike Babcock, who basically threw lines out there and just went with it no matter what, because it was his way or the highway. And he was working in a way that was 10 years past its expiry date. But do you think Sheldon Keith's ever going to come under fire or at least under criticism for maybe mixing things up a little too much?
I don't think so, at least until it doesn't work. I mean, right now it's worked. I mean, I think in response to over 4 years of Babcock being very static and very set in his ways, it's refreshing not only to the players on the team, but to the fans and to the media that he will throw out Matthews and Marner. He will put Nylander with Tavares, which we wouldn't have ever seen, I think, with Babcock. The only time I think it will be pointed out as a negative is he puts a combination together and it clearly doesn't work. But based on what Keith has talked about after games, if it doesn't work, he's going to quickly change it. So I think the players are now prepared for the fact that if like, for example, Austin Matthews played badly in New Jersey. I think he was -3. He didn't see the Austin Matthews share of ice time in the third period. Or he was moved around. That's going to happen if you don't have it. Like in basketball, if you don't have it, you're going to sit the bench and somebody else who might be shooting better is going to have the opportunity. That's a refreshing point of view when it comes to, you just don't keep throwing a guy out when he doesn't have it.
Did you see that your picture interviewing Sheldon Keith made the broadcast?
Yes, I'm going to have to start asking for some sort of recompense when it comes to Sportsnet, because they've used that picture a few times. And hey, I like the exposure. What can I say?
And interestingly enough, you look like the only one in that picture with his eyes open.
Well, I guess they caught me at a good moment, because sometimes I'm looking into space. Sometimes I'm listening with my eyes closed.
And the picture's on Community right now, youtube.com/The Leafs Convo. Sheldon keeps asking himself, what did I get myself into? Why did I do this? This Mike Augello guy won't let me off the hook. Amazing stuff. Just a few more things before we go, and I have one more question about a Leafs player that is going to be vital to this team's success down the stretch, at least in my opinion. I put a poll on Community. I asked OGs and converts to watch a video I sent out. Mike, you'll remember this, from Rocky IV after Apollo's funeral. Rocky gets into his Lamborghini and goes for a spin, right? And it's the No Easy Way Out song playing, and he's doing the flashback of him and Apollo and him and Adrian and him getting ready to fight Drago. I don't know if you remember that montage, but I asked the question, is it too hype, or unfortunately with my spelling error, is it too chess? Meaning, is it too cheesy? Do you recall that that montage? And now when you do, and you think back on it, and you get that lump in your throat, was that too cheesy or too hype?
It was too cheesy, because honestly, of the Rockies, that was my jump the shark moment. Like Rocky III was my favorite, and him beating up Clubber Lang after Mickey dies. That was good. Basically, being the anti-communist poster boy, beating up Drago in Moscow. I'm sorry, it was just too much.
Actually, that was at one of the arenas in Vancouver, reading into the history of the movie. Like I typically do, I spend more time reading about a movie while it's on than watching the movie. I love it. I still get excited about it. I love those flashbacks. They choke me up a little bit. They remind me of sports flashbacks and stuff like that. So I had to put that out there. Unfortunately, just reading it now, I wrote the two options was Rocky IV's music montage after Apollo's funeral too hype or too chess? So I'll have to keep an eye on my spelling. I'm pretty good at spelling, but I don't know. Maybe I had my glasses
What?
off, or I may have been inebriated.
Yeah.
Who knows?
What is this? Searching for Bobby Fischer?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's pretty bad. Just want to do a quick little roll call for the OGs and the converts who do a nice job contributing to community. Steve Hardman, Lord Longmarch, cool and trending. Minecraft Dad and Son. Is this a dad and son kind of thing? Listening to the podcast, I like bringing family together over some Leafs talk. Brad Randell, Brad, thank you very much. I miss Soup and Muzzy, says Severino Cudicillo. I still feel like that name is made up, but an incredible contributor to our community. John Howard, Brad Randell again, and of course, Timberwolf, the London lad. When are you going to come in and buy that Bronco from me? I know they're not coming out to like 2021, but put an order in now and leave a huge deposit there, Timberwolf. Last question for you, Mike. Is Michael Hutchinson the backup for this team going forward all the way to a Stanley Cup championship?
Good question. I'm not sure. I mean, basically right now, as long as he keeps winning, I think that it alleviates some of the pressure off of Kyle Dubas to go out and get a backup. I mean, there were rumors about, and last month or earlier this month, excuse me, there was rumors about that the Leafs looking at a KHL goaltender who's setting some record numbers. Problem is that they can't sign him until next year. So the here and the now, before the deadline, I think the reason that they're sticking with Hutchinson is because the prices for a Georgiev or one of the Pittsburgh goaltenders like Casey DeSmith or Ryan Miller are just ridiculous. And if that's the case, then I don't think they're going to be robbed for a goaltender who's going to play once every 4 or 5 starts. They'll stick with Hutchinson, hope that they can win. And I mean, the season is heavily reliant on Freddie Anderson, and that's the little bit of a concern for me is that before the break and after the break, he looks a little sluggish. And you got to remember, for most of the late November and December, his workload was much heavier than it normally is. And that's going to have ramifications going down the stretch. And they have to find somebody who can give him regular rest so he is fresh for the playoffs.
Georgiev, the Bulgarian Patrick Waugh. It's true. It's true.
Yeah, I jokingly made that sort of moniker for him, but I don't think he's a number one goaltender. Russ Cohen, who I do a podcast with, who's a big Ranger follower, says he doesn't think Georgiev is a future number one, but the Rangers are playing him like a number one, I think, to sort of sell him as a number one option. And that's why they're probably going to ask for a lot in a trade for him. He's not a number one. He's a really good number two, but that's what the Leafs need, is a really good number two.
The Leafs at the Wild on New Year's Eve. I do not work that day. Mike, what do you say we reconvene for the last Leafs Convo of 2019 then?
Sounds good.
Talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks, Norb.